Assalamu alaikum and greetings everyone. This is Light Up with Shwa that you're watching. I am your host and founder of this podcast, Shwa. I have a very special guest with me and I'm so happy that she's here and I was able to catch her because she is a busy person. But never busy for me, I would say. I'm so flattered by that.
That's true.
Thank you. So I have Mariam. So please can you introduce me with your full name and what do you do?
Certainly. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor for me to be on your podcast.
Thank you.
My name is Mariam Chughtai. I grew up in Pakistan and I came to the US for my higher education. I finished it. I was here for about 15 years. Mm-hmm. And then after I got done with my PhD, I moved back to Pakistan. It's been 4 years now since I moved back.
Oh, it has been that long?
Yeah, I moved back in 2015 and it's now 4 years later almost. And over there, I'm a faculty member at LUMS. I'm also the Associate Dean of the School of Education. And currently, I'm back at Harvard. I'm doing a fellowship for a semester to write my book.
Oh, wow. So you will finish your book in this semester?
Pretty much, yes.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully over the summer for sure.
Okay. And can we know, my audience can know that what are you writing about?
Certainly. So having grown up in Pakistan, anyone who has this reference would know that we are taught a certain kind of history that is distorted. And I realized as I grew up that was not true of just history textbooks in Pakistan, but around the world.
Oh, okay.
But it's in Pakistan, it is very exaggerated. So my dissertation in my PhD and now my book is looking at the relationship between how we teach history and how an entire generation of people will learn to either be hateful of others or be more inclusive towards others. So it's sort of the link between education and even radicalization along the spectrum.
So your thesis, your PhD, was also in
education.
What was the topic? The education,
Yes.
But was it their specific area that you were targeting?
Yes, so I looked at history textbooks from 1938 to 2012, which is when I was writing my dissertation, and I looked at all national education policies in Pakistan, and I sort of documented how the narratives in history textbooks keep changing depending upon the geopolitics of the region.
Okay.
So, for instance, if there's a war in Afghanistan against communists, the Soviet-Afghan War, so our history textbooks will start, or our textbooks in general will start promoting narratives against non-Muslims to support that war. But then, 20 years later, there's a war on terror in Afghanistan and suddenly our textbooks and everything will change and be like, no, Muslims are peace-loving people, Hindus are peace-loving and Buddhists are peace-loving.
Oh, wow.
So what that does is that, first of all, it shows that politics has used and abused religion in Pakistan for political gains. Secondly, it shows that Pakistan, we all know, there's a lot of scholarship on this, that Pakistan has a client-state relationship with the world. So, for the right price, we will give our airspace, we'll even give the lives of our soldiers. But my research is showing something that has not been studied before, that for the right price, we will even sell the identity of our youth. So essentially, there are political elite in Pakistan over time, both dictators and democratically elected, by the way, who have been completely fine pushing narratives that were not true and now creating this chaos of identity in Pakistan. So people who grew up in the 60s cannot relate to the people who grew up in the 80s and cannot relate to people who grew up in the 2000s because they understand Pakistan to be very different. Their textbooks are very different. So my dissertation and my book is really documenting that, really juxtaposing the exact same history textbook, social studies from class 3 in this time and showing, like in the 60s we talk about the 1947 partition as freedom from the British, the colonizer British. But in later years we're talking about this was freedom of the Muslims from the Hindus. So which one is it? So I'm not really going into that this is the right history and this is the wrong history, but I'm just showing in one book to any reader that how politics of education works and how, when you're children, you're gullible. You think that if something is written and published, it must be true. But it's...
So the point of this is to bring awareness about what happens, so that without telling what is right or wrong, you're telling the way to identify?
Well, yes, I think that's a very good point. So one thing is to show how education is used as a political tool.
Right.
But I do go beyond that, and I make a prescription also that if Pakistan has to, come out as a stronger country, then Pakistan may have really bad literacy statistics, but one thing Pakistan is very good at is how to make identity. So we are actually better equipped than any other country to make some really good quality, balanced human beings, because we know how to we have figured out the beltway, and we've changed it so many times. So I am actually arguing that having a pluralistic society which allows for diversity and tolerance and acceptance is perhaps the best antidote to the rising extremism in our society. I'm not even, entirely focused on, global terrorism, but the people of Pakistan have suffered so much as well. So I think this is my main argument, that the best counter-terrorism strategy is prevention. And Pakistan's culture is very pluralistic. Pakistan's politics has been extremist at times, but Pakistan's culture is very pluralistic. So our education system really needs to promote that pluralism, the plurality, the diversity, the inclusion. And in doing that, we are actually going to be stronger than any other kind of counterterrorism strategy.
So when you say it is the society is pluralistic, how can a person who is a common person who doesn't know, how can they identify that, what you are saying? Is there a research? Is this your own idea? How can we second that?
So it's really the lived experience of people in Pakistan. So if you separate out the politics for a moment, in our culture we don't have conflict around race, ethnicity. We don't have conflict around divergence of views. We are very devout Muslims. We have tremendous love for the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. But people are not going to. So we will have people who fast. We will have people who don't fast.
Yeah.
We
so
have people
you mean
who pray.
We are okay with that?
Yeah, and we coexist, and we are fine. And then even in communities where we have non-Muslims living, there are a lot of Christians. I went to a Catholic missionary school, and I learned Islamiyat in that school. So our society is anchored into Sufism, and our literature, our arts, our music is very pluralistic. It allows for multiple ways of understanding God, but it's just that when we bring it into the political domain, that's when we become, very singular. That there's only this way of being or not.
And why is that?
And that's what I'm trying to say. That I think the politics and the political elite in any part of the world, but especially in Pakistan, use this kind of narrative to control people and to control mindsets.
So ultimately, comes to the power to control.
Right.
People.
So, for instance, if you have a war going on in Afghanistan, and you have to get your people to believe that Pakistan's role in that war is right, whichever war you pick, Soviet-Afghan war or the war on terror, then you can create a narrative around it and get people to buy into that narrative. And in return, we get, billions in petrodollars and other kinds of, aid. And so I think that's just not only unethical, but I think it's really unfair. Because these are entire generations that are growing up without and I think now is the time that we actually can communicate this message and understand it, because people have a lot more access to technology.
From that angle, yeah. So how is it going for you? You're openly speaking while you're in US. Are you able to do this while you're working in Pakistan? And how is your communication and your freedom of speech and choice after you have moved there?
I think that's one of the best parts about moving back. I am constantly being challenged on my assumptions that I had about Pakistan. Now, I was there till I was 21 years old. I grew up in Lahore. And I went back as like a 38, 39-year-old. But so I went back as a different person, as a professional and a career woman. But, there are all these assumptions about life in Pakistan. But really, the assumptions are inside your head. And if you can negotiate with yourself, I think Pakistan actually, again, coming to the point of the plurality, you can really be a lot of different things in Pakistan. Lots of people will say stuff, but they will say no matter what. So I have been able to speak about different topics equally comfortably. I have been able to travel across Pakistan for work in areas from Quetta and Turbat to Gilgit and
How
Hunza.
many men were around you?
They were all men.
Oh, okay.
And I, as a single woman.
A single woman, okay.
And
no other women were traveling with you?
At times I had one or two other women from my team, but many times, for instance, in KP, I've been the only woman in the room. And I have, and I would go dressed up the way I would be dressed up in Lahore.
And which is?
Which is, wearing shalwar kameez and a dupatta. I didn't cover my head.
Okay.
And I've had meetings. One time we were doing this focus group in Ramzan, actually, and we did the focus group over iftar. And this was at a restaurant in Peshawar, and the entire restaurant was packed. But I was the only woman in the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
But I was sitting
Were
at a
you
table.
intimidated by that or no?
No, I was not, and neither did anyone make me feel intimidated.
That's nice.
That's what I'm telling you.
That's interesting.
At Quetta, for instance, is surprisingly secular.
It is supposed to be, is it? I thought it was more conservative.
No, I mean, so the men over there have made eye contact with me just the same. If anything, perhaps in my home city of Lahore and in Punjab. So that's what I'm saying. The most beautiful part about moving back to Pakistan has been constantly having to challenge my assumptions.
Which were negative assumptions,
Yes,
basically?
yes. And then even professionally, that, oh my God, it's so corrupt, it's so bureaucratic. But, it is different.
Yeah.
But no one forces you to be corrupt. No one forces you to be unethical. And it's not true that everything is bad there, but everything is good here. We may have different names. We may call it Sifarish over there and networking over here, but the dynamic is the same thing.
I didn't think of it that way. Now
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, that can be used that way. That's true. Because we are too blunt. We don't say networking.
Yeah,
We just say. Okay. Well, I didn't want to stop there, but anyways, let's move on a little. And so your experience. So while we are on this topic, how would you compare your experience? You did mention living in US versus you living in Pakistan. So it has been so far a pleasant experience.
Yes.
Any challenges?
Yes, so when I was studying here, as I said, I lived here for a significant part of my adult life, 15 years, and these were the formative years of my life. So I think that there's no better place in the world to go for higher education than United States. I think that this was an absolutely wonderful experience for my personal growth, for my intellectual growth. But living in the United States as a professional was something that never appealed to me because I feel like in the US it is a very cookie cutter, very scripted kind of a life. And every day and every week and every weekend, every month, every year has the same format. In Pakistan, no one day is the same as the other.
That is
you
true.
can get up and see, face the day. So every day is different.
So I guess it's you. Otherwise, some people would be like,
Absolutely.
get very,
So my choice when I was going to decide.
So you're flexible. You are open.
I had the choice of being between a boring life and a difficult life, and I thought that boring would be too challenging for me. A difficult life I can still handle, but that's just me.
Okay. That's interesting. So are people, what I would like you to challenge my assumption, that when you are in authority, is that easier to make a point while you are LUMS? I think you're a director there for the department. What do you do at LUMS?
I'm the associate dean of the school at LUMS, and initially I was associate director of the project. LUMS did not have a school of education. It had a law school, engineering, business and humanities school. But me and a colleague, we got the project to set up the school of education there.
Thank you for doing that.
No, it's been really exciting. So I think that coming there, I think for people in Pakistan, LUMS has a very solid reputation.
Right.
It's, I think, the only institution or name that you cannot be someone significant in Pakistan and not be controversial. Pick any name who has done anything, and they're also controversial. Aside from maybe Idi Saab, I cannot come up with any other example.
He also had
Even
a little bit of
here
and there.
But LUMS, for some reason, has managed that, and I think that initially I wasn't sure because I'm not a graduate of LUMS, but going at LUMS and having that institutional affiliation with I could have, been with the World Bank or a donor organization or a government, but I think having a university affiliation has been really good because I then represent a national institution, and that is what I would advise also for anyone who's moving back or thinking about moving back. First of all, you must have some work to do because otherwise 3 weeks is your limit before you jump off a cliff.
Exactly.
So you have to have some kind of a work that gives you a lot of, satisfaction. And then, an institution like LUMS or something which is exciting, it gives you freedom to do something important, and there are a lot of very competent people at LUMS.
I want to challenge you a little bit with that. I think, don't you think your positioning in the society before you came here and after you went there makes a difference as well?
I agree. I think socioeconomic class and from like very explicit things to how much your personal family wealth is, to things such as superficial things such as your skin color or your gender and all that, all those things impact. But I would argue that that is true anywhere in the world. In the US, perhaps, there is more institutionalized racism than anywhere else in the world. But that said, I think that it is true that, my social class does trump my, perhaps I wouldn't be as able to do so many things as I am right now. But I'm not so entirely sure about that as well because the work I'm doing is not in my family business. I am at LUMS because of my own credentials. And
that would be my another question when I come to the parenting. Like, did anybody force you to do this?
No. My father would be very happy if I just came and sat in his office all day, but much to his displeasure.
And what does he do?
He's a doctor.
Okay.
So, and so there's a whole network that my parents already have, which is in medicine, but I have picked education. So, so I think that there is something to, even if you don't have that entire network, but if you're willing and driven. And then also around socioeconomic class, there are a number of women who work in my team who are not from that same social background, but they are independent, fierce career women, and they are willing, they have their own set of challenges, but they are perhaps an inspiration for me. So I agree, I take your point that, your social class does make a difference, but I don't think it's a make or break difference.
Okay. So, be hopeful, you can make it, whoever you are.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, let's come to, if we haven't already addressed, I don't know. So, let me ask you a little philosophical question regarding the education. When you were growing up, do you feel that your school education had any meaning to who you are today, or was it all useless, or could you say something about it? Because there are so many kinds and classes of educational systems that we have. And I don't know how much you are working for that, but I'm sure you identify and recognize that.
So, as I said, that I went to school at a nice missionary school, Sacred Heart, and I think the education that I got over there, which was truly impactful, was what happened outside the classroom. Or what happened, which was not written in the textbook, the hidden curriculum of the school. So one of the most profound things that I learned as a student at Sacred Heart was that there was just complete equality, irrespective of whether someone came from a rich or a poor background. So, there were uniforms and all, but the way the teachers treated each one of the students, there was no way for the rest of us to tell it was not until after matriculation that we realized that, some person came from a poor background and someone was very rich. That is something you don't find anymore. In fact, schools in Pakistan, for the elite at least, have become very superficial. And kids are very cognizant of it as well. They want to make sure that their parents come in a certain kind of a car and the mother is carrying a certain kind of a purse. And I think that was never even a conversation at my school, which was incredible for me. The second thing that I think I owe my life to my school because of this one thing is that we were not allowed any makeup or jewelry at Sacred Heart. And
nowadays it's very
yes,
different.
and I mean, little girls, they're putting on nail polish and their parents are putting on nail polish on them. So what that allowed me to do was that for the first 12 years of my life, I learned to look at myself as a human being.
Okay.
I didn't think of myself as a girl first. Because for the rest of my life, the world was going to look at me as a woman first and then a human being, which is the opposite way than it should be. But it really allowed me to internalize and to know myself as a person, and then as an adult to relate to the world and to demand that the world treat me as a person, irrespective of my gender. And
so it was more on you rather than putting it on your school system or the society and all.
No, the school created this environment.
Okay.
And my parents believed that this was the kind of environment that was worthwhile for a child. So that's why I think that I credit it to the school.
So would you compare those missionary schools with the other, without taking any names, the elite schools? Is there a difference in, I think what you're mentioning is more...
Over time, yes. In general, there is. But no matter what school you are at, there are lots of really good schools in Pakistan, in not just elite, but low-cost private or public schools even. Some are very high quality. I think it really matters what the priorities of the parents are. If the parents have a priority, kids will come home with all kinds of ideas. Now we want to do this, now we want to do that.
Right.
When I was at Kinnaid, my mother used to say...
Kinnaid is the college that you were in, Lahore.
Yes, it was...
And Sacred Heart was where?
It's also in Lahore,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
So at Kinnaid, there were always some very conservative girls and some very liberal women as well. And
I thought everybody just brushed their hair and did the makeup and did the catwalks.
No, but exactly, that's
I heard about it.
That's the perception. But, they were the toppers who were coming from all parts of Pakistan, who were these really intelligent but really simple girls. And then there was a whole Islamic Society clan that was a very religious clan. But they all belonged in Kinnaid College. They were equal KCites. So when I would go home to my mother and I would say, some women, they, bunk college and they go out on dates, my mother would say that there will be every kind of people represented in every time. But you have to decide, and I as your parent am telling you that this is the path you're going to take. So I think that even today, even if someone's kid is in a school environment that is encouraging, say, materialism, but if the parents are clear that this is not the values that we want our kids to grow up with, it may be harder for the kids in school, but it's a good training for the rest of their life. And I think that is very important and very doable.
It's a very good point to come to the topic of parenting now, that you have mentioned your mother, and I think I would like to talk about that also. So what's your experience with, you are not a parent?
I'm not.
Okay. And what is your idea about parenting, if you have any? But do talk about your parents. So do you think they contributed in who you are today?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, first of all, my mother is a career woman. She's a medical doctor herself.
Oh, okay.
And my father is also, so my mother and my father have the same profile.
Were they tough on you?
Yes, it was a difficult childhood. My mother was the military and sort of dictator in the house, and she was particularly tough with me because I was the older daughter, and she wanted to make sure that the rest should just follow.
You.
But I think I mean every day I reap benefits of that kind of childhood.
So you think the parent, one parent or both, should be little
no,
on the
I think
strict side?
I think it's very important for a child to understand that their parents are fair. And even if it's uncomfortable or unpleasant, it is the fair thing to do.
Okay.
So my father is a very loving father and was always, on my side. And I think that always balanced it out with my mother. But I think that this sense of fairness and justice is important. So just being tough on a child, or
So you could differentiate between that at that age?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think my parents were very fair in between the siblings. All four of us, 2 brothers, 2 sisters. There were not different norms for girls and boys.
Okay, that makes a difference.
Yeah, so I think that kind of
You didn't
fairness-
get less food or
No.
no permission to go out and
If anything, it was more for my brothers that they had to work a little bit harder. But,
okay.
but I think with time, society does catch up with you, and it did as I got older. But just in terms of parenting, if we're talking, I think it's very important for parents to be strict if needed, but not in a way that the kid feels that this
traumatized or
traumatizing, or that this was uncalled for, or that. So it's important for parents to have a good communication with their kids. I don't think parents need to be their best friends.
Yeah.
But I think parents need to be like older brothers and sisters for the kids in some ways.
So you just mentioned communication, right?
Yes.
That's what have you found between your parents and you? Communication, do they listen to you? Have they been good listeners when you were growing, or are they more perceptive to you now?
I think my ability to go to my father, knowing that I could go to my father no matter what, and talk to him.
That shows something.
From when I was 4 years old to now when I'm 40 years old. That puts in
You
a
don't
kind
have
of...
to tell your
No, I
age.
think in this day and age everything is public, but
Okay.
but I actually am really celebratory of my age.
Very good.
I
Very good.
celebrate every birthday with
You don't look
excitement.
40, but you do look good. And,
Thank you.
Yeah.
But
And
I
it's a
think that-
very important age, as we know.
I agree.
Historically,
Yeah.
Islamically, and from, I think,
Absolutely.
from personal experience. We can come to that also, like what happened when you turned 40.
Yes.
But please, tell
I
me
think
about
that,
your...
in fact, there's research on this, that women who have positive relationships in their childhood with their fathers are less likely to put up with abusive relationships.
Exactly.
And
I have read
because they think it's not normal for a man to mistreat them. And they have plenty of reference points where they are cared for and they are respected. So when they experience disrespect, this is abnormal for them. Versus a child that has experienced a disrespecting father towards the mother, a disrespecting father towards the children or daughters, they will think that is normal.
Exactly.
So I think that even if I didn't always go to my father and tell him what was going wrong, but the confidence I had that even if I make a big mistake, I can always go to an adult who will help me out of it. I think that was crucial in my upbringing.
That's a very important point, that to have a relationship with your parent, one of the parents at least,
Yes.
to be able to have this confidence that you can really speak to them about anything, or
Yes.
have that feeling.
Because the world really exploits that of women, that, I will embarrass you in public, or I will tell this to your parents. And women are frequently blackmailed into lots of worse situations because of this kind of an attitude. So this is in some ways your
Covers
parents
a lot of
preparing
territory.
you
Yeah.
that don't be blackmailed.
Yep.
And it's fine if someone says, I'll go tell your parents,
And you're like,
I will
"Okay,
say,
fine."
well, go ahead. They probably already know. So.
It happened to me, so I'm not going to talk about me, but that reminds me of a story that happened to me, and if we have time, I'll talk about it, and that was so crucial. Anyways, so that does, I can second that, like I have experienced
Yeah,
the same way.
absolutely. I'm sure many of your viewers can
Yeah,
also
and
relate.
so I hope we can get comments on what Mariam is saying, and if you have any story to share, please do so. And you can go to my website at lightupwithshwa.com and talk about your stories. So, so how do you identify yourself as, if you're not a parent, is there any other role for a woman
Yes, I know. So in Pakistan, you know how in the US we say whenever we meet someone, so what do you do,
What do you-
right?
yeah.
So the first question in Pakistan is, how many kids do you have?
So do you get that?
Oh,
Okay,
all the
time.
And when you say that you don't have kids,
Oh,
so it's a conversation killer. And then if you say further,
Thank you for watching part 1 with Mariam Chughtai. Stay tuned for part 2 next week. Till then, please subscribe, share, rate and review, and see you then. Bye.